Hey, and welcome back. About a year ago, I ventured into the project of building a travel-sized bass drum and kit out of some Keller shells. The videos I made to follow this project were two of the better performing ones on my channel, and the kit was a major success in my mind. At the time, I had gotten this 18-inch drum shell cutoff with only 7 inches of depth, which forced me to make this kit pretty shallow. After a year plus of this being one of my main gigging kits, I decided I would like to have a little more depth on this bass drum to make it more sturdy, a bit more presence and volume, and add some flexibility and tuning for different applications. If you've ever ordered drum shells, you know the prices can be pretty discouraging, and that kept me from getting this project done sooner. But then I found Nordic Shells. I was somewhat familiar with this company as they are out of Minneapolis, and I used to be not too far from there. But recently a friend of mine from college started working there, and he's been telling me about all the work they do and extremely affordable prices of their shells. When I looked up the prices on an 18-inch maple shell, I was shocked to see that I was able to get it for a little over $130 after tax and shipping. So that was enough to get me to pull the trigger on rebuilding this kick for my travel set. Within 2 days, I had this drum delivered and was ready to prep for my build. I decided to order an 18-inch shell with an 18-inch depth because the price increase compared to a 10 or 12-inch depth was only a few dollars. And now I have about 7 inches of material left over that I could either sell or use for a future project. Once I had my shell cut to its final depth, I went ahead and sanded the shell as it was smooth to the touch, and I needed to roughen it up a bit to get the stain to take to it. It took me 2 or 3 coats of stain to get the color match with the rest of my drums, but after a day or two, I was ready to begin clear coating. I did about 6 to 8 coats of clear gloss polyurethane, sanding between every few coats. This is definitely a time-consuming process, but if you have the opportunity to go out every few hours and apply a new coat, you can usually get this sort of thing done in a couple days. While my new shell was drying, I went ahead and stripped the hardware from the older shell to prep for drilling holes on my new kick. I recently got this drum layout mat printed at a local print shop, and I can't believe I've never had this before. You can download the files for this for free at drummaker.com and take it to your local print shop with the instructions they provide for getting the right size. It made marking out the layout for a drum a breeze, and not only do they have the layout for the lugs, but also suggested markings for spurs and a tom post. I drew reference lines everywhere I needed, and then transferred those lines across the depth of the shell using a square. Once I had my lines, I figured out the hole pattern to get all my lugs perfectly in the center of the shell, along with the hole spacing and layout for my spurs and my tom bracket. Once everything was drilled out, I could go and attach all my hardware to the new shell and move to the final step of cutting bearing edges. As you can see, I have a pretty small router table, and it makes turning a bass drum like this pretty difficult. I wish I had a bigger surface, but I was able to make it work after a few tries, but unfortunately my camera died before I could get the finished result. I went with the same double 45 as before, and funny enough, as I was working on this project, a new episode of Drum History podcast came out discussing bearing edges. I found it to be super helpful in understanding the ideology behind different edges, and honestly, it made me go back and recut my edges a few days later. I would highly suggest checking out that show if you have the chance. With my new bass drum shell being about 3 inches deeper than before, I needed to order some extra long tension rods from Drum Factory Direct. These guys are the best for parts, and I can't recommend them enough. I quickly assembled this drum back together and set it up with the rest of my kit to see how it looked. I find the bass drum to be much sturdier and stable now with the added 3 inches of depth. I loved the 7-inch deep drum before, but when I would play on uneven surfaces, it just wobbled around everywhere and had to be lined up just right to have it be stable while I was playing. The new larger shell has some more room for error with that sort of thing. Additionally, the original kick was great for quiet jazz gigs, but when I would use it with a little louder group, the kick just couldn't keep up with the amplified instruments. I find now to have a little more volume and presence, and it's a bit more suitable to being mic'd up. The tuning also has a wider range, and I find it easier to get some lower tunings with extra depth for any sort of pop or contemporary music. Overall, this project was a success, and for just around $150, I was able to upgrade a kit that has been such a workhorse for me over the last year, and I'm really excited about having this going forward. If you've ever built a drum or kit like this, I'd love to hear about it, so leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Until next time, thanks.